The Martians. Chapter 17. Over the next several months things healed with Beth, Mindy and Mark. Louis began talking to her semi-ex more and more and was remembering why she married him to begin with, although she was still seriously pissed. Mark knew where he stood with Donna, although he had not told her he knew yet. Anna, although friendly and warm, seemed ambivalent about pursuing a relationship with Mark. This was of some comfort to Watney as it would have been one more thing to worry about. Beth and Mindy began a long-distance friendship, albeit a weird one, and they never spoke when Mark or anyone else was around. Still they made plans for the reunion on Hermes and beyond, and both seemed contented, if not exactly happy about the situation. KK continued to be everyone on board's pen pal, and all adored their little goth sidekick. More and more they began writing her into their weeklies, and her parts were filmed by NASA at the NPT station near her home. Their ratings steadily improved. Mark was back to his usual self and become the humorous optimist that held the crew together in tight quarters. The first harvest came and went, tested okay for consumption in that it had no trace radioactivity, weird chemicals or mutations. Fresh veggies, as they came in, helped the crew's morale as well, and Mark was notified by his alma mater that as he had grown crops on Mars he had colonized it. Mark took this to mean he was the king of Mars and for a bit laughed that the rest of the crew should refer to him as His Majesty. The crew never saw it that way and declared Missy to be the queen, however while Mark readily accepted that she was the commander of Mars, only he had actually colonized it and only he could be king. This was debated until finally Donna contacted Houston with the question and got an answer back that this was all against the UN treaties on the usage of space. Mark pointed out that as king of Mars he had never signed such a treaty and had no intention of doing so. It became a running joke among the crew, as well as the crew of Hermes, who threw their hats in favor of Mark, but only after he promised them huge tracts of land and the titles of Duke and Duchess of Mars and Protector of all things Martian. He even agreed to whack them with swords, knighting them as a further bribe for their loyalty, and promised to protect their kingdoms from any extraterrestrial invasions. NASA worried that other nations supporting the Mars program might not find it as humorous and quietly had Missy cut it all out, which she reluctantly did. Her joint crews were coming together, and she didn't want to mess with the chemistry, even if it was silly. The second crop was coming along fine and would be harvested just before Hermes' arrival if all went well, then the ground would be reseeded, and the monitors set to twice-per-day beam updates to Houston. With the Hermes 2 months out, Mark awoke with a start. The message alert was blaring from Houston. Everyone else was on the lower level still asleep, so Mark followed procedure and opened the channel to review the message, which was text. KK Victoria, be advised meteorology shows strong storm of Sol 6 type approximately 1.5 hours away, Mark Zulu 1815, moving on a path which may intersect your position. Open satellite channels for imagery and radar. Copy. KK Watney to Houston. Roger Houston. Will advise commanders. Watney out. Hey commanders, you might want to get up here. Mark shouted down the portal. What is it, Mark? He heard Missy reply, half asleep. Weather alert. We have a Sol 6 type storm that may hit us. On my way. Mindy, get up, let's get ready to bug out. Missy said loudly. Everybody up. We may go into orbit early. Mark heard Mindy shout. Mindy was immediately awake and pulling on a jumpsuit. Missy just went up the steps in her skivvies. Mark had seen her in less, but still lost his focus. Donna, Anna, fold up the cots, stow anything you find that is loose and seal the water supplies, showers and sinks. Get ready to rotate them if necessary, I'll be back in a sec, Mindy ordered as her other 2 crew members got up and got to work. Oh, and check to make sure all the samples are strapped in. Mark, you should get dressed. Missy said as she entered the comm to find him still in his underwear. Ah, you too. Mark grinned as he switched the video to the satellite imagery. What do you think, Mindy? Missy asked. Well, it doesn't look as bad as Sol 6, but that's a pretty high wind speed if the reflection rate is right. Mark, we need to fold up your cot and get ready to rotate the comm. Ah, okay. I can do it, you go help Anna and Donna. Mindy smiled. You're not thinking of leaving, geez, we would be in orbit for weeks. Probably not, but we might. Orion 3 has a coding for tilt that your MAV didn't. If we go past 13.5 degrees with the power on, it launches itself on the assumption that the crew is on board, unable to act, either unable to land safely, or slow to lift off. Then it uses radar telemetry to park itself in high orbit and the O2 goes to over 20% to wake everyone up. Hopefully at that point with enough fuel to attempt landing again. Feeler gauges on the struts and the gyros can level on landing of course, but if the ground unexpectedly gives away, it's out of here before it falls over. It's a safety feature. Probably not going to happen, we are heavier and have a wider base than the MAVs do, so we are going to be less affected by the wind, but I don't want to be slammed into a wall by accident. Mindy replied. Oh. So, is there a procedure for this? Missy asked, glad that her XO knew the ship so well. No, when Orion was built no one knew about these storms. It wasn't until Ars 3 that it was known to be possible. We should be fine, but we should get ready anyway out of an abundance of caution. Mark, can you tell the others to suit up and come up to the con when they are finished? And Missy, you might want to get dressed, I'm guessing the next message will be video. Mark, once you're done down there please haul my Eva up, would you? Got it. Good point. Missy answered while Mark nodded his head and slipped into his jumpsuit. Missy went back to the lower habitat level to get hers, then returned while Mark was helping the others finish prepping the living quarters for flight. He didn't really know how, so he just followed Dana and Anna's instructions and aided as he was able. Hey Commander, the rover, shouldn't we unplug it and move it away from Orion? He asked just as Missy was finishing up getting into her own Eva. Shit. Yes. Mindy. She shouted to the upper level, how much time do we have? From the looks of it, at least 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Why? I'm going out to move the rover away. No. Mark nearly shouted as he was putting his Eva on. I've got it. Worst case scenario, the ship needs its commander more than its botanist. Missy stared at him, knowing he was right. Where you going to put it? Beside the big rock past the botany hab we were going to blow up. Maybe that will block any big gusts. Go, hurry. Any trouble you come back, park it downwind from the ship and get back in here. Bring up the staircase with you. It will break away if necessary, Mindy said through the upper level portal. Okay, don't worry about that. Missy replied. See you in a few. You want me to go with you? Anna asked. She was already suited up as well. No, someone might have to fly this thing, Mark grinned. I will, Dana volunteered. They might need a doctor here. Seriously, it's no big deal. I could go. Mindy said. Who would know how all this stuff works? I'll be back before the storm hits. Leave a light on for me. With that said, Mark smiled and stepped into the airlock. It took Mark only seconds to disconnect the power cable, throw it in the rover and hop in. He didn't bother to pressurize it as he would be opening it back up only a minute or two later, and he left his Eva on. Mark returned in under 5 minutes total to the relief of all on board. Most of that time was driving the rover and cycling through the airlock as he covered the distance back by skipping it in hops, and that took less than half a minute. He could tell that the wind had picked up by the dust blowing off everything, but the atmosphere was so thin that he could not feel any of it. Of course, the actual storm was still well away. While he was out, Anna and Mindy ran the pre-flight systems checks and found all to be good and operating at optimum levels. Hey, I'm back, no problems. Storm is still 45 or so away, we're going helmet on in a half hour or so, Mark, Missy said. This was a mixed blessing to Mark as it was still 74 degrees inside, but he had his suit set at a more comfortable 70. Without his helmet he would turn the temperature control off as it would just blow out into the command section of the ship. Evas really held the heat in, and the system would slowly heat up anyway, so for the next half hour he would be sweating. On the other hand, not having the helmet on was much less claustrophobic when indoors. He took his helmet off and sat beside Dana in the lower tier of seats, with Missy on the far side of her. Mindy and Dana were seated above them at the command console. No one said anything for several minutes, although there was a continuing conversation with both Houston and Hermes. Mindy announced Mark's return and that Victoria 1 was secured for emergency launch if necessary. If this came about, which everyone doubted, they would be in orbit about 6 weeks before Hermes arrived, but their real work on Mars was done. They had been doing busy work for a few weeks, having completed all the original Ars-4 research as well as several months of new tasks developed by NASA. The only interesting part of their work the last several weeks had been the botany lab, questing for gems and interesting minerals, and making videos with Annie Montrose and KK's assistants on Earth. After several minutes of light radio traffic, Mark broke the silence. "Hey, do you have any footage of this for our weekly?" he asked as he remembered his personal bag had been under the seats /cot when they were folded down. "Oh. Good idea, Mark." Mindy replied, "What are you looking for?" "My bag. 4 billion men in the world and we get the one that's worried about his purse," Dana joked. "No, it has some stuff in it I don't want to lose. I put in the storage bin beside you there, blue 110. See it?" Mindy said. "Oh, great, thanks. And it's not his purse, Dana, it has his peace offerings to the Hermes crew." "Oh. More opals?" Anna asked. "No, well yes, a few of the really pretty ones, and some magnetite and olivine, but we had limited time to prep when the evac occurred and everyone had to leave their stuff. Some of it, it was precious to them and I didn't want them to lose it, so I put the most important ones in my bag." He gave up a change of clothes to bring Beth her college hoodie, Rick his cross, Alex his kids' photos, and Dr. Beck his watch. "You saved CHR. Dr. Beck's watch?" Dana asked. "Yeah, it meant the world to him. He said it was given to him by a loved one. I couldn't leave it on Mars," Mark said as he stared at Dana. She softly smiled and knew Mark had read the inscription on the Rolex, "Come home, I love you, Stella." A silent message passed between them as she reached over and squeezed his hand. "Thank you," Dana mouthed silently, to which Mark merely smiled and nodded. "You only had one change. No wonder you smelled so bad." Missy grinned. "That's probably not the reason. Leave him alone 5 minutes and he's feral. Like a stray cat. In heat," Anna said. Mindy turned the camera on as everyone giggled, and they shot about 10 minutes of footage of the crew in their launch chairs explaining why there might be an emergency launch and all the things they had done to quickly prepare the ship to be ready. Their mood had lightened, although all were still stressed. After the footage was taped, they reran the pre-launch checklist twice and then waited. "So, Mark, if we launch you are going to have to sleep down one level with the rest of us, these seats will have to stay upright," Anna announced. "Well, it's not like I haven't, Beth." "Stop. There is no way you can finish that sentence without sounding like a jerk, Watney," Lewis ordered. "He has a point, Commander. We not only got stuck with the male astronaut that worries about his purse, but also the biggest libertine at NASA," Anna said, making everyone giggle. "Well, be that as it may. It's true. We have the biggest man-ho in the scientific world," Mindy suggested. "Wait, we aren't going to pick on Mark just because he's a ho." Missy grinned. "I'm a ho. Really? I'm on a ship with a bunch of women that have literally slept with every guy on the planet and I'm the ho. Really? We want to go there, do we?" Mark giggled. "Okay, point taken. Mindy, don't log this conversation," Missy said, trying to control both her embarrassment and laughter. "Got it. Running silent. Also, it's time for helmets. Dana and I will be on mic from here on out, but NASA may hear cross-talk. Be nice, Mark." "I'm always nice. Man ho." "Geesh," Mark replied as he fitted his helmet in place and keyed his mic onto the internal network. When the wind began to make noise as it passed around the craft, Dana reached beside her and took Mark's hand again, and on the other side Missy's as well. They held each other this way for reassurance while the storm began to blow all around them.